There's a variety of different routes we can start this conversation, but I thought firstly, it would be great to get your perspective and your view on the whole Jani Hakanpaa situation, and more so like what happens behind the scenes when you sign a player.
Well, I'm not sure precisely what you mean, Nick. I apologize. What?
There's some gray area with Hakanpaa. They brought him in. It's not official, but then Steve Simmons of the Toronto Sun speculating there could be like a knee injury there. So the Maple Leafs haven't made this thing official. More so like just wondering what happens behind the scenes, like when you sign a player, what you have to go through to clear him.
Well, he would have been asked to clear a physical, as you guys know, and there's at the start of the season, at the end of the season, the player has to be certified by the medical staff. It's Form 25A, I believe. And they have to fill out that form at the end of the exit physical at the end of the year. They've got to detail any problems, any potential surgeries, any injuries, anything that has to be treated. And if the player comes in and has an existing injury, he's got to clear his physical or won't be allowed to play.
Yeah. Hey, Burke, when you're at the helm of NHL teams and you're signing guys or even drafting guys, how much due diligence, like how deep do you go into a player that you may not be that familiar with as far as character, obviously injuries and stuff like that too, but do you got to go pretty deep and really start to dig on a guy sometimes?
Well, the character part's very different, Rosie, and the answer is yes. The character part, we better have that down, at least the first 4 rounds anyway. I used to tell our staff, we can't know every player in the 7th round or whatever, but we got to know the first 4 rounds, and we got to know everything about them. We got to know what hand they eat with, what kind of food they like, that kind of thing. So when they go through the scout, say it's Jay Rosehill from Alberta, and you're presenting, the Western scout would say, okay, here's Jay Rosehill, height, weight, brothers, sisters, siblings, what they do, what dad does for work. He was an auctioneer. What mom does for work. Does she work? We want to know that. If they're a 2-income family, they both work. What the other siblings, are they successful? For PK Subban, we interviewed him. He had 2 sisters who were high school teachers, and one was a principal already. His dad was a principal. The family excelled, and it was obvious early on the kid was going to excel also. So you do a lot of homework on that. On the injuries, unless the guy's got an injury history, you ask him about it. Our medical staff asks him about it. There's a cursory examination, but unless we were tipped off that there was a problem, we're probably not going to catch it the first time. Doesn't matter if he's got a problem. He's still got a problem. Like, in other words, it doesn't solve it. The fact that we don't pick it up on the screening doesn't help him if he can't play.
And I guess we'll find out in the coming days what happens here with Jani Hakanpaa. But generally speaking, and it really doesn't matter what people think in this market, but people are pleased, are optimistic, they're feeling positive about the first day of free agency. What did you make of the moves Tree made?
Well, I don't think he won free agency. I think people think Nashville did, but I think he certainly improved his team and did a good job in areas where they really need help. They need to shore up their D, and they did that. I'm a big TJ Brody fan, as you all know. I had him in Calgary. I think he's underrated and he'll be missed, but I'm really a huge fan of all the defensemen that they brought in, really, but especially Tanev. I mean, I think he's an elite shutdown defender, and they'll get 4 years out of him. They may not get the whole contract at a high level, but they'll get 4 years out of him at a top level. His leadership, proven winner. Had his brother in Pittsburgh, obviously, Brandon rather. So, no, I like the moves. I think Tree's a sharp guy. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's learned from all the mistakes he's made, which aren't many. But I think he's getting better at the job, not worse. And that's very common with people in their second job. They often excel more than when they're first time through. And it looks like that to me with him.
Looking that way. Burke, going into the crease, we've got 2 goaltenders it looks like they're going with. Not a ton of games played between the two, but what was your take when you're deciding on your crease? Do you like to have that one solidified stud who has proven, or do you mind having, switch hitting 2 pretty good goalies where either one of them could take the reins and take off?
Well, I think we've seen an evolution in the goaltending position just in the short time that I've been around. The last 30 years, you've seen a complete, Marty Brodeur playing 80 games. Yeah. And now I think teams are looking to platoon way more. They want a 50-30 split. And I know whenever I say that, people say, Brian Burke can't even add. That's not 82. Shut up. 50-30 split roughly. That's what teams are shooting for. But I think Vegas kind of stumped everyone again a couple years ago by going with, we got 3 big guys who all have good athletic ability. We're going to sort it out and figure out who will be the starter. And they won a cup. So I think a lot of people now are saying, as long as we draft people who are 6'3" to 6'4", 6'5", with good athletic ability, we'll take our chances on one of them turning into a goaltender.
And the Leafs got this monster, Anthony Stolarz. I don't know how much you know about him, but I think to add to your point, the crease has become so volatile that it almost isn't the best direction or pathway to sign these guys long-term and have a bona fide stud, because you just don't know what you're going to get on a yearly basis.
Yeah, and we're seeing that time and again, and the proven formula of having a starter play 50 games and then he's your number 1 guy. That's not going to be the model anymore. You're going to start off with, a lot of teams are going to start off with a 1A and 1B and let them fight it out for the crease, see who gets in that. The guy that's hot might play 10 out of 12 games, and then the other guy might take over. So I think it's really evolving as we speak, as we watch. The goaltending position is evolving again. So Stolarz is a huge kid. He's 6'6". I think his skate sign is 6'8". Really athletic for a kid that big. Usually, some of the athleticism suffers with a guy that big. Usually, he loses his quickness. He doesn't have quick feet. Doesn't react well because he's too big. But that's not the case with this kid. I think he's going to make it real interesting. And Matt Murray, everyone ignores Matt Murray. Matt Murray's a great kid and a good goaltender. If he's healthy, he'll be a factor too. He'll get some games.
Yeah, interesting. What as far as GM, what's going on right now behind the scenes? We've had the Mitch Marner talk. You've been vocal, Burke, about not having that much money invested in, a small handful of guys. What do you think Tree Living's doing right now, and how difficult is it to try to make a move of that magnitude, especially when you act in the no trade clause that Mitch has?
Well, the other thing too, Rosie, is if you go back, I've been vocal about that, but I was vocal about that in real time. Like I said at the time, this model wasn't going to work. Back when they signed Nylander, made the big four. Yeah. Right on the spot that day, I said this is a mistake, and I've been vocal about it since. And I stand by that. I think that a cap model, even going up $5 million in the cap, it's still not workable for me. No other team has 4 similar forwards locked up in pure skill positions, and so I think they still have to solve the problem. Obviously, with no trades and no moves, which are really, you can really question the wisdom of all that. But now looking back, but I think it's really a case where you're gonna have to negotiate. One of these guys is gonna have to convince one of these guys to get out, and I think the logical guy to move would be Willie Nylander, not Mitch Marner. I've said that before, but it might end up being Mitch Marner. But I think they're gonna have to talk one of them into leaving, and it's not popular. People aren't going to like it, but they're going to get it.
Why do you think it should be Nylander? I
think that Mitch Marner is a really important player on a team. He kills penalties. I know people are down on him right now, but he's a great kid and an important player. They're both good players. I think Mitch Marner is a much more valuable player to me.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they're good players. It's just a matter of, like you say, when you put them all together, is it sustainable, and will it, give you enough leverage on the other sides of your roster to make things work to go the distance? But, right now, with a lot of people paying attention to free agency and picking and, looking at every little word that Tree Living says, how did you find the market being the GM there? You're a pretty straightforward, straight shooter guy. You always just call it like you see it. But did you ever find that you're trying to play an angle with the media or release a little bit of info or play that game in that big market?
Not really. I felt, I've said this before, and you guys have heard me say it, I felt I was treated fairly by the media in Toronto. We didn't play well, they wrote that. When we played well, they wrote that. By and large, notable exceptions. But the fact of the matter is, it's the size of the market that's a killer for the GM. I was explaining this to Tree when he took the job. You go to Calgary after a game, on a hockey night game, so a Saturday night game in Calgary. There's 40 or 50 people in the dressing room after the game. 40 or 50 people with cameras and microphones and tape recorders. There's 100 after a Leafs game on Saturday. That's why the dressing rooms are so big. They're not for the players. The dressing rooms are that big to accommodate the media in the NHL. I'm not making this up. Rosie, you're laughing at me, but it's true. It's true. That's the only reason they have rooms that big, or we'd all have much smaller rooms. We'd much rather have our players closer in contact. My favorite rink in the NHL, or well, not the NHL. My favorite rink in the world is in not Mannheim, in Cologne, in Germany, because they have the dressing room at practice has a sliding door, sliding wall. So the players, when they get dressed, are about 6 or 8 feet apart, can make eye contact and talk without shouting. Then practice ends, and they slide the wall back in Cologne, and now there's room for the media. That's what I'd like to see in all the rinks, but it's not going to happen. But that's why the rooms are that big, and that's why the pressure in Toronto is unrelenting. There's 80 people, 90 people, 100 people writing about your team, and they're all picking up a rock when you lose. For me, it was me or Phil Kessel or Dion or Ron Wilson, but someone picks up a rock, and there's 100 rocks all of a sudden, 20 coming for me, 20 for the coach, 20 for Phil Kessel. And next thing you know, there's a whole bunch of rocks flying around and people are starting to panic. You just have to ignore it. But I think overall, I've said this before, I believe the treatment I received in Toronto was fair. I didn't get the job done there. People wrote that, and that's okay.
Yeah, it is a wild market. I remember getting off pregame skate and I couldn't get to my stall because there's too many cameras, too many reporters, too many wires, and you're tiptoeing over their wires and everything. And I'm just shaking my head saying it's a Tuesday against Columbus, and this place is just crawling with someone wanting a story, someone to get their name out there and print something that a lot of people see. It is wild and crazy. And now that we're in it on the other side, we're seeing it from the other side, and it's just as crazy as it was back then.
Yeah, it's not getting better.
No.
And the social media side has made it a real cruel business. Like, I didn't have any of that stuff to deal with when I first got started. And I know I sound like an old man, but when I first got started, there was no social media. There was no internet. And so we didn't have to deal with this lunatic fringe that they have in some of the markets.
Yeah, I was going to say too, like the whole thing about the Marner situation has been the PR battle, Berkey. I'm sure you've noticed in the last month and a half alone, every scenario has played out in the media. Do you think that's calculated from both parties? I actually think Tree's done a pretty good job of watering the fire, if you will, because again, not much has come out, in the last couple of weeks, but I think he's done a pretty good job of just chilling out here.
Yeah, I think he's done a good job. He's an unflappable guy. He's not a guy that gets excited or worked up. He's not like me at all. He's much calmer than I am. And therefore, I think he's handling this really well. And it's a tough situation. It's something he inherited. And it's a tough situation. It's not, when I say we got to move one of those guys, it's easier said than done. And I like the players involved. I like all 4 of those players. Mitch isn't going anywhere. Austin's not going anywhere. I don't think Tavares is going anywhere. And Tavares has been a good soldier. He's played well. He's earned his money. And the other 2 guys are good guys that have played well here. It's not easy to say, oh, it should be Nylander. I like Nylander. His dad played for me. But I think if you have to do addition by subtraction, the logical guy to move is Nylander if you can. And I'd hate to move Mitch, but they might have to. I don't think the model works. I don't think that's news to anyone. It's getting better with the cap going up $5 million, but it's still a problem. Yeah,
you mentioned John Tavares there. There's a buzz around, the media right now about them taking the captaincy away from John Tavares, giving it to, most likely you'd give it to Austin Matthews. What's your thought on that? Would that be something you'd ever do? Or do you think that's crazy to think that they would do that in that market, and what a buzz that would make?
Well, I've seen teams do it. I've never done it that I can recall. I'm pretty sure I'd remember if I did. I remember I've had the discussion before, and I feel it's such a drastic step. Then it's admitting you made a mistake in my mind if you put the C on a guy and then take it away. But you've seen it happen. It happened in San Jose, and it's happened recently. So it's not unusual. It's not unheard of, but it is unusual. I wouldn't entertain that discussion. I think John Tavares is a quality player and a good guy. I think he's earned his money. He's done a good job. He's killed penalties. He's worked on a power play. I think he's a useful guy. He's good in the community. I wouldn't entertain that discussion. I've heard the rumors, though, the rumblings.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.